Hello and welcome to Stoughton Politics with this guy. I am your host, Noah Beta Haron, and I'm here today with Lisa Lopez, who is running in the Norfolk 6th District for Massachusetts State Representative.
That's correct.
So, Lisa, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am delighted to be here. First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity. I have been a 42-year resident of the district in Canton, but because I am a Massachusetts resident by choice and not by birth, even after 42 years, that makes me somewhat of an outsider. I have spent most of my legal career in private practice in the private sector. As the chief legal counsel for a medical device manufacturer that was based in Braintree, Massachusetts, called Hemanetics. Some of you may have been familiar with the very large sign across from the South Shore Plaza before it relocated to Boston a few years ago. And I spent almost 25 years of my career there. We went from a very small company to a global organization in that period of time. In addition to being the head of legal, I wore lots of different hats throughout human resources and health and safety and internal audit and regulatory affairs and investor relations and external affairs. I used to say that I did everything from negotiating tax agreements and regulatory agreements with the FDA and picking out the wallpaper in the women's bathroom. It was an all-hands-on-deck kind of experience. Thrilling. I was, for all of my time, the only woman on the senior management team. There were no excuses whatsoever for failing to get results. And I think I was there through 4 CEOs and 5 chairmen of the board. We were a public company. Yeah. But fast forward, or I guess I should say that those years were exciting to be part of the business, but unbelievably demanding.
I bet.
Because, as I suspect most of your audience can relate to, I was raising 3 children. With a wonderful partner, but nevertheless, there was a lot of juggling.
Yeah.
That, as well as a lot of public service and a lot of local government service in Canton, makes for a very busy and full life. Today, I am just as involved in community service and in government service. But in addition to being a mom, I'm also a grandmother. And honestly, I am throwing my hat back in the ring predominantly because I care about the world that my grandchildren are going to inherit.
So tell us a little bit more about your government service in Canton, because I read on your website you were a select board member for 4 years. And you were on the climate committee or something along those lines. So tell us a little bit about that.
Let me back up. I first got involved believing that Canton could benefit from opting into a law that is known as the Community Preservation Act. And so I led that effort with others, and we failed the first time. And we failed the second time to get it embraced and voted in. And we won the third time. And even the naysayers at the time are now strong advocates, because in the years since 2012, when it was voted in by the town's voters, there has been more than $10 million devoted under the law to recreation, open space, historical preservation, and community housing in over 70 projects throughout the community that, but for this funding, would likely have been too small to make it on the radar screen of town meeting members or town leaders, or too big and audacious to enable people to really take it on. And I formulated that committee, and I chaired it for many years, and I am still on that committee. And I'd love to talk about one of the projects
Sure.
that was a capstone project of the Community Preservation Act, and that is the Paul Revere Heritage Site.
Yes.
People in the area might have been familiar with what was called the Plymouth Rubber site. And Plymouth Rubber owned 40 acres of property a block from downtown Canton for 100 years.
Wow.
The 100 years before that,
Yeah.
it was owned by Paul Revere. Yes, the Paul Revere and his family.
Interesting.
But when the Plymouth Rubber Company went bankrupt in 2006, it was essentially 40 acres of a toxic waste site. And because of the Community Preservation Act, the committee was able to spend $3 million in bonded funds to purchase open space. And the town was able to negotiate a grand bargain with the purchases of that property out of its bankruptcy. And today, we see just a gem of a property, which is a park, a museum of Discovery and Innovation, the Paul Revere Museum of Discovery and Innovation, the Northern Spy Destination Restaurant, housing, condominiums and rentals within walking distance of our MBTA train station, and within a block of downtown. So it is just a poster child for what can be done between public and private, as well as really leveraging CPA dollars.
Yeah, and that's now also bringing in tax revenues for Canton, so it's paying for itself, yes?
Millions and millions of dollars of tax revenue that, but for that project, would not have been available to the local budget. So we are enormously proud of the Paul Revere Heritage Site. But getting back to town service, while I was on the town select board, I championed the town's adoption of an affordable housing trust. Unlike most of the cities and towns in the Commonwealth, Canton was above 10%. But a number of the units in our inventory are what's called SSI, subsidized, SHI, subsidized housing inventory, are due to expire in terms of their restrictions on sale or rental price within a period of time. And therefore, we risked falling below 10% and therefore losing control over our local zoning. In addition, we have an aging demographic of seniors who want places to downsize that are more affordable, that are easier to maintain, that are all on one floor, that have less of a tax burden and a utility burden. So we need more units as well. So the town did agree to create an affordable housing trust. I was its first chair. I was off the committee for a little while, and I am now back on the committee, and I am its chair as well. And we are doing what we can to serve our mission to both preserve and create new units of affordable housing throughout the community. I also was one of the leaders that spearheaded the adoption of our energy aggregation program in Canton that allowed residents to essentially buy in through kind of a Costco-like bulk purchasing agreement to electric energy.
Interesting.
Allowing people to benefit from the group purchasing and also to accelerate clean energy across the state. And since leaving the select board, I was elected to the Housing Authority, and I chair our Public Housing Authority, which, with our executive director, who does a fabulous job, we are responsible for about 250 units of our public housing in town.
Okay.
Again, for folks who are part of the community, many of them who moved into those units were long-term residents of Canton, looking to downsize and looking for a housing option that suited their needs. Some of them are living with disabilities, and so they needed special accommodation. But we have quite a number of units that we're very proud of maintaining.
I was going to ask about the housing and affordability part of your agenda, because obviously at the state level, there's plenty of work to be done on housing and affordability, but it's a different kind of work for the most part. So, first off, is there, what has been your experience and Canton's experience of the MBTA Communities Act? Is there more work to be done on that? Were there issues with the act that came up for you? What has kind of the interaction with the state been like?
Okay. I actually credit the administration of Charlie Baker for passing what I think was really smart policy in the MBTA Communities Act, because it is a case study for transit-oriented development. And by that I mean situating more dense housing options, whether they be apartments or condominiums or small-styled housing of any type, but more densely constructed in areas where people can walk to public transportation. That's good housing policy. It's good environmental policy. It's good transportation policy. And in our case, because we have two transit stations within and very close by our downtown, it's good economic development policy, because it provides more customers for our restaurants and bars and other businesses downtown. I think where the state fell short a bit is in helping to communicate to the municipal leaders of cities and towns what the act required and was about and what it was not. There was a misunderstanding that it required construction. It did not. It required zoning, and gave the municipalities enormous discretion about how to configure that zoning that most suited the needs of a community. There was also a miscommunication or misunderstanding that it required building of 100% affordable housing. It really had no requirement of any affordable housing. Whether affordable housing is to be included or not in the zone that was required proximate to public transportation excuse me, is entirely dependent upon the town's own zoning requirements. We, I think, did a wonderful job, and it was the joint action of a number of municipal leaders, our town planner, groups like citizen groups who are very concerned about housing. I was thrilled to be part of the effort that had a number of educational sessions for the community. So when it came to town meeting, I think there was a very thoughtful discussion that people understood what the act was and was not, and that in particular, the neighborhood surrounding our Canton Junction train station, which was already the site, because of the Paul Revere Heritage Site and its housing and other housing there, and it made imminent sense to make that the zone that would be compliant with the MBTA Communities Act. So it passed, and on the first try, and we are already seeing projects being cited, I think there's some concern that the very first project that was cited under the Act is taller than some people expected or desired. It's still in construction, and I'm holding my breath, hoping that when the final construction is completed, the landscaping is done, the open space is there, it will be more fitting, and all of those residents will have about a 2-minute walk to the commuter rail into Boston, which is just a win-win for everybody.
Absolutely. Allows people to drive less and all manner of good things.
All manner of good things.
Absolutely. There was a statement on your website that interested me and that I felt like I needed to know more about. You wrote, "We can't save our way to long-term financial stability. We have to make thoughtful choices about what short-term investments deliver long-term benefits and rethink traditional approaches to how government services are delivered and funded." And that made me very curious. What are the traditional approaches to how government services are funded and delivered that we ought to be rethinking?
Well, we all know that actions of the federal government right now are going to inevitably result in the loss of millions of dollars in aid to Massachusetts. And whether we like it or not, that is happening. And that will inevitably result in fewer dollars to be distributed in state aid to cities and towns. And therefore, it is incumbent upon state representatives to work very closely with our municipal leaders to determine their priorities, which may be different town to town, or could be consistent, across a district, as well as to work very closely with our congressional delegation in Washington to be sure that the available dollars are spent on priorities with a provable, foreseeable, long-term payback. We cannot spread like peanut butter money over a wide variety of projects that are nice to haves. We're going to have to make choices and be very deliberate about the choices that we make. I would rather spend some money up front if in corporate parlance, ROI, return on investment, is significant. And if it's documented, and if we've got good data to say that the spending makes long-term sense, then I would like to throw money at a project because it happens to be politically expedient or popular. I think we really need to be thoughtful and say some things are really important to do now. Some investments are important to make now, and others would be wonderful to have, but we cannot afford them now. And those are fundamentally choices that voters and municipal leaders have got to do the hard work of figuring out. I hope that each of the towns are doing the work of essentially strategic planning, so that they have a really good handle on what their short-term, mid-term, and longer-term needs are.
Yeah.
so that we can make financial plans accordingly, because the taxpayers are understandably pressed.
Yeah.
They're hurting.
Yeah.
And I hear that. I mean, I have spoken to hundreds and hundreds of voters across the district. And, rents and mortgages and utility bills and gas and groceries, all of the above are putting a strain on everybody. And so taxes are a real pressure point.
Yeah. Are there any kind of specific spending choices across the state or across the district that you think do not have good returns on investment? Like, are there any, because obviously everybody would like to spend the money where it's going to do the most. Are there any things you have your eye on saying, like, this one, though, is not doing the most, right? Because you got to cut somewhere in order to have the money to invest somewhere else.
Sure. I do think that the state needs to rethink its Chapter 70 formula funding for schools.
Okay.
The way that the law was constructed, it delivered certain tranches of ramped up spending over a period of years.
Yeah.
And it distinguished between communities based on need.
Yeah.
The realities on the ground have changed since that law was first constructed.
Yeah.
And the last tranche,
Yeah.
I believe, is supposed to be in fiscal 27.
Okay.
There has been a plateau of enrollment expected, forecast.
Yeah.
On the other hand, the inflationary factors associated with public school education, predominantly wages and benefits of education staff, as a result of inflation, are way up.
Yeah.
And so the state has got to take a new look on that formula funding to determine how it, working together with the local contribution through real estate taxes, can really best deliver a quality education that we have always been very proud in Massachusetts for being able to offer our children. And honestly, I hear the excitement, the attraction to Massachusetts because of its public education quality from young families, but I also hear from grandparents that not only do they believe that their grandchildren should receive the same quality education that their children did, but they recognize that the value of their homes is directly influenced by perceptions about the quality of education in their towns.
Yeah.
So there's an appreciation across the board that we need to fund public education.
Absolutely.
And I think there are some adjustments that need to be made in that Formula 70 funding to take into consideration current realities.
Okay, so that would be kind of changing which communities need the most of the education funding, or is it changing altogether how much funding is given out to communities and having communities rely more on property taxes? Is it having communities rely more on property taxes or less on property taxes, or is it like just changing which communities have to do
I think
more
there
of
will
their
be
funding that way?
adjustments in the amount of funding that goes to different communities based on those communities' needs today and forecast. And I think the state funding will have to increase because it is not likely that in the near term municipal property taxes will be able to materially increase to keep up with the inflationary factors that are real.
Absolutely. We have many surrounding towns that have refused to do overrides of their property taxes and have had to cut services in various ways. It seems unlikely that towns in general are going to say, okay, great, let's raise property taxes to 3% because the federal government is giving less. We're going to need more help from the state rather than less for the most part.
That is the case. There are towns, certainly, who have recognized that with an aging infrastructure in terms of their schools, some of them have no choice but to agree to a temporary debt exclusion.
Yep.
And those have been voted favorably. And particularly with the reimbursement by the state of 40% and sometimes more of the total cost of a project, it can be a very attractive way to finance
Yep.
new
That's
construction.
what we're doing in Stoughton. So.
And so those projects are going forward, but municipal leaders have to be very thoughtful about the taxpayers' appetite for those projects and make sure that there really is buy-in. And I think that takes a lot of on-the-ground communication and education with families of students, as well as the taxpayers in general, about how the designs for the new infrastructure is maybe not Cadillac, but as someone I know describes, a really good Chevy is now.
I mean, it's interesting because one of the things at that was kind of one of the arguments that Stoughton was having with itself, and there was a lot of questioning of how come we're doing something state of the art for the new elementary school rather than something cheaper, and the answer was fairly simply that the MSBA would only fund projects that were up to certain standards, right? So we were actually, as a town, we were saving money by getting the better school because otherwise we were going to have to pay for it entirely out of pocket and not get the state funding because the state has certain requirements. They're not going to allow you to build a school the same way that they did in the 1960s. You're going to have to build a modern school, and so that some of those kind of best practices end up being cheaper for the town, even if they're a more expensive project altogether.
Absolutely, and state of the art can refer to design of classroom space, design of multifunctional activity space that can be used for other purposes, say by the community. It can also refer to sort of environmentally friendly design, and in the case of Canton's new middle school, the design incorporated certain environmental standards which have been documented by the third-party experts to significantly reduce long-term energy bills.
Right.
Which is in everybody's interest because the taxpayers pay the operating expenses of our public buildings.
Absolutely.
And so if we can make those buildings heating and cooling systems state-of-the-art, if we can use solar panels, if we can dramatically decrease our utility bills, that's a win-win. And that's an example, to my mind, of spending smart in order to save dollars over the long term.
And in many ways of the state pushing us to spend smart.
Indeed.
Right. In ways that towns on their own might not have. Okay. You have a point on your website about healthcare access and affordability. So I am curious where you think the state needs to go on healthcare access. Do you, for example, support the so-called mass care, the drive to have single payer for Massachusetts, or some other configuration? Like what do you think needs to be done on the healthcare side?
Well, long term, I'm not sure that there is the short-term appetite for single-payer health care, but if that political will existed, I would vote for it in a nanosecond. Because I do believe that single-payer health care that covered basic healthcare needs, almost in a way that we now take for granted public school education, K through 12.
Yeah.
But in our country, unlike, say, European countries, education beyond K through 12 is at the personal expense of a student and student's family.
Yeah.
Whether it's a public school, university, or private, it's out of pocket. I think someday, whether it's the Commonwealth as a leader, as it has been in the past, or the country as a whole, there will be a bundle of care that will be single payer, and we can achieve efficiencies of scale. We can eliminate the fragmentation and a lot of the third payer costs. I think we have much too much expense in our healthcare system.
Oh, yeah.
That's paid to third parties, administrators, insurance adjusters, people who check the numbers, versus clinicians.
Yeah.
Now, there doesn't seem to be an appetite for that now, although in principle I support it.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, I would like to move toward anything that can increase standardization of parts of the healthcare system that I think patients and patient families find unbelievably frustrating.
Yeah.
When trying to navigate for aging parents or myself, it is a full-time enterprise to be on the phone with the insurance companies.
Absolutely.
It should not be this hard.
Yeah.
It should not be this hard to access care for a kid that needs an annual checkup, or a kid that has a broken arm, or a woman that needs a mammogram. It just shouldn't be this difficult. I've been fortunate that my records, healthcare records, are largely in the same place because I have used the same system for the last 40 plus years, even though the owners of that system have changed repeatedly.
Yeah.
But how much money is spent on fragmented systems for either keeping track of our healthcare visits or, heaven forbid, our medications?
Yeah.
Every time I change a provider of my pharmaceuticals, I have to learn how to navigate a new website, a new system. There are new records. I have no idea whether they're synced with the old records. That just seems to be an area that is ripe for overhaul and optimization. And I know there is one provider that will probably come out a winner, but I think that the public would win as a result. And I don't want to take away from the fact that the United States has a well-deserved reputation for medical innovation. My business for years was in medical products, medical devices for improvement of both surgical outcomes and cancer therapies.
Yeah.
And so the amount of money that's spent on research that's translated into patient care is real.
Yeah.
But there are a whole bundle of healthcare services that I think Americans ought to be able to access
Yeah.
at a much, 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 much lower price point.
For sure.
With the recognition that for really specialized surgeries or care, like a university private education,
Right.
that becomes more of a private pay option.
Yeah.
That's the concept that I would love to
Interesting.
move toward.
Okay. So does that look like almost an expansion of mass health to cover certain basic care for everybody? Like what does this look like?
It does. It takes into consideration that if we were to make preventive care and certain obstetrics care more widely available and accessible, there would be longer-term improvements in public health, not just for me and my family, but for the community writ large.
Yeah.
That would save money. I mean, whether it be controlling someone's propensity to have lifestyle choices that could lead to diabetes or heart disease or cancer. If we can make a dent in those in a material way by spending more on childhood care and childhood education and family care and education, we can reap the long-term benefits financially and, just as important, in quality of life.
Yeah.
For families and for the community.
Absolutely. Okay, so tell me a little bit more about the Canton electrical choice. I know that Governor Healy continues to vocally support a quote-unquote all-of-the-above energy strategy. Is that good enough, and what should the state be moving towards? How do you see it proceeding?
Well, I am delighted that notwithstanding the Trump administration's attempt to stop some very important projects in Massachusetts, and in fact the entire New England corridor, that the Healy administration and the legislature are fighting back, and a wind project was, I think, just launched. It was just completed and launched. I think those projects are inevitably going to reap long-term benefits for homeowners in terms of the utility bills and for the stability of the grid and for the region at large. And there are going to be more of the same. I personally have benefited from the Mass Save program that helped me retrofit a very old home with solar panels and insulation. And I'm not sure how willing or able many homeowners would be to adopt those very smart changes absent the rebates and the education and the hand-holding that Mass Save has enabled. So I hope that program is continued to be supported. I guess I would adopt a all-of-the-above strategy conceptually, while believing that we cannot do everything at once, and therefore, I like the approach of picking some very likely to succeed projects and seeing them through to completion. Because the longer a project takes, and we've seen that, whether it was the Big Dig or so many other projects, the longer it takes, time is money, financing delays cost enormous amounts of money, and ultimately the taxpayers pay. So let's pick projects, let's cut the red tape, let's make them happen, let's get them completed, and start reaping the benefits sooner rather than later. Because the commitment to get off dirty energy and transition to clean energy, I think we cannot back off of that commitment. But we cannot do everything at once and risk that delays in processes, whether they are caused by the federal government or any other reasons, sort of slow down and then double the cost of a project.
Right. Okay. Civil rights and immigration is the fifth point on your website of what needs work. So my question on that is, the governor recently signed a bill barring ICE from entering courthouses and providing other protections against immigration enforcement overreach. What additional laws and measures would you support? And I'll have some follow-up questions to that, but what?
Well, let me tell you where I'm coming from. My family is a family of immigrants. My father-in-law came to this country as an adult with no money, no education past the 8th grade, and no English. My grandfather escaped from Mexico. My grandmother came as an adult from Puerto Rico. My one son-in-law is an immigrant from England, another is Canadian. So I identify very strongly as an immigrant family who, through access to great education and frankly very good luck, has had a very good life in this country. For this reason, I decided, even though immigration law was never a legal specialty of mine, to become a pro bono, for free lawyer for children from South America who were legally entitled to a green card, but without a lawyer would never, ever be able to navigate what I have personally experienced as a labyrinth of confusing, ever-changing, irrational, impossible to decipher laws and regulations. That is a patchwork quilt of requirements depending upon the politics of the moment over the last 100 years that any administration has promulgated these laws and regulations. It is a black hole, even for lawyers. And so I say that as a preface to answering your question. I was personally appalled to learn that when people who are doing their very best to pay the fees, to hire a lawyer, and to pay the government-required fees, which are not low.
They're not low. No.
They're trying to follow a very confusing process. They're appearing at their court dates as required. They were being nabbed with no notice, in front of their children, no ability to plan for or expect or communicate what was happening. I mean, it was, I'm sure, terrifying. And it is counterproductive because we want people to follow the process. As difficult and confusing and as expensive as it is, we want them to follow the process. And then when we do, we say, gotcha?
Yeah.
You know, that seems to me so unfair.
Yeah.
So unfair. And so we have always in this country recognized that we're the sanctity of certain places. Hospitals, churches, temples, other places of worship, courthouses.
Yeah.
That if members of the community need access to those resources, they shouldn't be in fear of being nabbed
Yeah.
by government agents in masks.
Yeah.
That seems antithetical to who we are as a people. So I applaud the governor's action to prohibit that from continuing to happen. I don't know what else is being contemplated. I commit to studying it. I believe absolutely in the need to keep our communities safe, and have always supported the notion that anyone, immigrant or not, documented or not, who commits a crime needs to be held accountable. That's not news.
So I have a question about that, because one of the few carve-outs in the law, I think it's called the PROTECT Act, was for the currently existing 287G contract that the Department of Corrections still has with ICE, where you can do your time and then instead of going home, you can be deported. So, is that something where it's one of those things where the governor kind of demanded this carve out? Would you support something to take that out of there and say no agency in the state should have a contract with ICE, or is it something where you think we should kind of respect the governor's opinion on that?
I have a problem with someone who is arrested, convicted, does the time, and is pursuing a claim for a green card under any of a whole variety of routes that our law permits, and for USCIS or ICE to say, we're not going to let you to continue to pursue that claim just because you were arrested, convicted, and have already served a time. We're going to have the right to deport you. I've got a problem with that, and so I respectfully disagree with the governor.
Okay, thank you. Okay, good. We still have enough time for this. Mm-hmm. So there's sometimes a tension, especially for legislators, but between fighting for what you and your constituents believe in and kind of going along to get along in order to bring more appropriations dollars back to the district. So where do you see kind of the balance between fighting hard for the things that are important to your constituents and to yourself, and making good enough friendships, collegial enough relationships in order to bring money back to the district for its important infrastructure projects?
Well, fundamentally, the role of the state rep is to represent the district. That means all of the district, all of the towns in the district, Avon, and Stoughton and Canton equally. It means representing all of the residents, regardless of political persuasion. It means representing the businesses and it means having very close relationships with the municipal leaders who also represent their districts or their towns. That really is the fundamental role of a state representative. I guess I reject the notion of going along to getting along. I would rather see myself having earned a reputation over all of the years of my private sector career and my public service, which has been both in the town and in the community writ large, as being a very hard worker who accomplishes results and is persuasive as both an advocate and as a problem solver. So I would hope that my hard work and my advocacy skills earns me the respect of the leadership, so that even if we disagree, I would have their respect. And I think the voters are hungry for a return to government service which is imbued with a commitment to communication, cooperation, collaboration, and fundamentally decency.
Yeah.
You know, that we can disagree, but we can disagree with respect. I am not a politician. I'm not trying to enhance my resume.
Yeah.
I am actually doing this because I believe that my grandchildren deserve something better than the current state of affairs.
Yeah.
And I think that I can be a strong advocate for the district without sacrificing my values, even if I don't agree with everything that the leadership would request. And there inevitably will be some of that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Okay, last major question is there something, or rather, what is the something that, bothers you in politics, right? I like to ask everybody to rant about something, and I know you don't. Maybe rant isn't your favorite term, but there's everybody who cares about politics has at least a couple of things that drive them crazy, that they feel like people don't understand well enough, and you just want to shake the world and say, you've got to pay attention and understand this thing. What's one of those for you?
I'm not sure I would presume to know anything more than what people are seeing all around them. I can tell you that many of the voters I've talked to share my concern that although we in Massachusetts always felt somewhat protected by the values that, I can say went back to our own state constitution written by John Adams, the reality today is somewhat profoundly different. I think the Trump administration is going after all blue state legislatures, and honestly, Massachusetts in particular, even though we pay disproportionately more taxes into the federal coffers than many other states, I think we are feeling the effects of his administration's war on our universities, our environmental projects, our immigrant community, women, law firms, the voting rights that we hold very, very dear. And so our expression of democracy is at stake. And does that make me upset? You bet it does. But there will be a day after. And I think we need to put these next 2 years to good use in preparing, planning, not only with our allies across the state and across the aisle in the state, but with other New England states, in the region, because I think there's a real shared, and I used this word before, hunger. I think there's a shared hunger to getting back to a place where we can disagree with respect, we can behave with decency toward one another, and we can get after solving some really serious problems, like feeding and educating our kids and our grandkids, and making sure that their quality of life is as good or better than our own. I think that is a genuinely shared hunger. And I would hope that, irrespective of party affiliation, that is going to be expressed in this year's midterms.
Okay, thanks so much. The primary is September 1st. We have, I'm not in your district because Stoughton is split in half, but good luck on September 1st.
And let me just say
yes.
that many people don't appreciate that because there are no Republican candidates, to my knowledge, in this race, the race will essentially be decided on September 1.
Yeah.
Primaries are typically lower turnout events.
Absolutely.
And years ago, I lost an election by 1 vote.
By 1 vote.
I won the next year. But I am a case study in the old adage that every single vote matters. So I take nothing for granted, and I'm going to work for every one of your votes. But in addition, many voters don't appreciate that even though they may be independent.
Yes, if you are unenrolled in Massachusetts, you're allowed to choose what primary you vote in.
Exactly.
So you do not have to, there are states, I think New York is one of them, for example, where if you're not enrolled as a Democrat, you don't get to vote in the Democratic primary. That is not the case in Massachusetts. If you're not enrolled as a member of a different party, then you can go ahead and vote in the Democratic primary, which means
if you show up, you can ask for that ballot. If you
Absolutely.
are accustomed to a write-in ballot, you have to
Yeah.
actually ask in your application for a Democratic primary ballot.
Absolutely.
But yes, we really hope that there's reason enough. There are a lot of very hotly contested races in this
Absolutely.
primary.
Yep.
So there's lots of reason for people to show up to the primary. It is, of course, September 1, which is before Labor Day, and a lot of people are away on vacation or not thinking about elections. So
fill
if
in
you're
your
one of
absentee
them,
ballot now.
ask for a write-in ballot, please, because your vote will matter.
Absolutely. And it's going to matter in this race, in
Absolutely.
the DA race. A lot of things are going to be decided in the primary rather than on Election Day. So thank you very much for that reminder, and thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. I appreciated this opportunity.
My pleasure.
Come on, sugar. Woo! Come on. I'll work it.